Welcome to yet another episode of this podcast series titled The Many Aspects of Financial Inclusion, where we explore the challenges and opportunities in the financial inclusion space. So, my name is Sunil Bhatt, and I work as an associate partner at MicroSave Consulting, and I closely work in the financial inclusion lab, which MSc is running along with the CII of IIM Ahmedabad. So this Financial Inclusion Lab is an accelerator program, and we started in 2018. And since the last 5 years, we have incubated close to 50 startups, right? And these startups are largely FinTechs and skill techs. And in FinTech segment, we have different types of startups like saving techs, lending techs, enablers, insurtech, and others, right? And it has been a great experience for us, working with the startups closely, understanding their challenges, and also helping them grow. So it has been a fantastic journey for us these last 5 years. And through this series of podcasts, we are trying to, bring out the experiences of working with entrepreneurs. And we are trying to bring entrepreneurs whom we closely work with, understand what helped them to sort of move on to the entrepreneurial journey. How did they design their solution, and how's the solution doing currently, and what's the vision that they have, right? And we are thankful to the donors and the funders who have funded this initiative of the Financial Inclusion Lab. And specifically, we would like to thank JP Morgan Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, MetLife Foundation, Omidyar, and MSDF for this. And in this podcast, we'll try to dive a little bit deeper into the startups, understand the founder's journey, and try to answer some of the most pressing questions on how to create value for low and middle income segments of India. And remember, this is one of a unique accelerator programs globally, which works specifically for this segment who earn between $2 to $10 per day. And that's the uniqueness of this. And fondly, it's referred to as the Bharat segment here in India, and which has a population of around 550 to 600 million people. So with this background, I would like to welcome the founder of FinTechs, Krishnan Vaidyanathan, who is an ex-banker. And before he even sort of embarked on this journey of starting FinTechs, he has an extensive experience of working in banks and largely lending. And I will let him to explain about himself. So Krishnan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Nishant. But first of all, I think thanks to you guys. There's a lot of learning that we had with Nishant and the team. Some of the answers that we thought we know, I think you guys came and kind of made us understand what actually the reality is, which is very, very good. So thank you so much for that. I'm looking forward for a great conversation ahead.
Yeah. And thanks, Krishnan. And we also have Nishant Kumar with us, who leads the Financial Inclusion Lab in India. So who will be also asking a few questions to Krishnan today. Welcome, Nishant.
Thanks, Sunil.
Yeah. So, before we even start, just to give you a background, right? FinTechs, in its simplest form, sort of facilitates lending, and by lending I mean digital lending. And if you believe industry estimates, digital lending market will grow to a whopping $515 billion by 2030. Now that's one of the numbers given by one of the reports, and then there are different numbers which are floating around. And even if you look at just the MSME lending itself, so that's also in the same range, the gap of lending. And a lot of formal lenders, and by formal lenders, I refer to banks, NBFCs, and financial institutions. A lot of them are struggling to sort of meet this gap. And it is companies such as FinTechs who are supporting them to do this. And in our podcast, we essentially try to understand the journeys of building for such a market, trying to work with incumbent organizations, and what are the learnings. So these are very, very challenging problem statements, and we at the lab are very, very lucky to sort of pick these kind of problems which are very much relevant to the current ecosystem. So with that, Krishnan, uh, I come to you, and maybe even before we sort of get started with your startup, if you could just give a brief background of your work experience, and where have you been working even before you sort of started with FinTechs, and yeah, so if you could just start with that.
Sure, sure. So I've been a banker for almost 25 years of my life, and start off with the ANZ Greenless from a branch, and then typical banker, you kind of keep changing banks maybe every 5 years, 7 years. I did that but fortunately for me, every time when I join a bank or a NBFC, there was a mandate to do something new. Like maybe I'm joining to launch a product like credit cards, or we are part of the team to set up a bank in India. So that's kind of really helped us understand how to build a business. The only advantage there being you got resource, you got money, all that you have, but you are still building from a A4 sheet. So that was really, great experience for me personally, and that helped me understand technology, process, policies, and so on and so forth. And other things, I always been, shuttling between tech and the functional role. So sometimes I work as a system officer, suddenly I move into become a credit officer. That kind of helped me understand on both sides, which I think is something that I learned really well in the banking. Last, I was with Deutsche. I was heading India retail risk for all products, primarily personal loan, business loan, home loan, SME lending. So pretty much all lending products, I was hitting risk, which effectively mean I was responsible enough to ensure that we don't make losses beyond a budgeted limit, right? So that is what was my role was. Typically, as I think would happen with most of us, a midlife crisis, start wondering what is that you are trying to do in your life. And fortunately for me, that happened much earlier. And my family was began me to say, fine enough. If you don't feel like going on Monday morning to office, so be it, just leave it, right? So that thing happened because so Deutsche for me was a brilliant organization. Everything was going good. Probably, I think people are thought saying he must be mad to leave the job, and especially in Deutsche. But we did that decision. And the first thing I decided is I will not get into doing anything with banking because it's been almost 25, 27 years, more on the retail race. So I end up building policies, lending, giving loans, collecting money. I said for a few years, I will take a break and learn something completely different. So that means you're taking double challenge, right? You're starting in, business in a banking is much easier than doing something which is unknown. So I did that. I got into education space. That's something that I always felt, so connected. So we are basically creating a distribution network for education firms. When I say education, they are like IT giants, Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk, and all that. Our role was how do we take them to the market? How do I ensure that every student knows what software testing is and get him a formal education rather than just a bookish? So we did that. I took almost 3.5 years. So that's when I really learned what business means, right? And how hard it is and how tough the sales job is. Because I've been a risk, I always used to hate sales, right? So that was a very big learning for me. We did a lot of mistakes. As I said, both being new, I used to keep flying for every meeting. Then I realized after 6 months, it doesn't make sense. When you run a business, you can't keep flying and staying in five-star hotel like in a bank. So all those great learnings happen. And then I decided, fine, let me get back to my roots in terms of my business. And that's when I had an exit to the education company. The company continues to do very, very well. So I took a break for about a year, trying to figure out what is the best thing to do. So I do quite a few consulting during that time in about a year. So that's when I came across this specific issue because as long as I was in bank, I never could relate to the borrower segments. That's a reality, right? You typically drive in a car, go to AC office, come back, and you believe everybody around is all as rich as you are or as great as you are. But then we keep ignoring that Bharat segment. That was what I was also, right? And when the education thing happened, I used to travel a lot, met so many people, met parents of interior college students. Is when I realized there is a big Bharat segment which is lying there seeking help. And unfortunately, nobody has probably looked at them, right? So that is what I thought, okay, I need to do something that can actually help this particular segment. Then obviously I come from credit, so I said, why don't we do something related to that? And I think there's also the time when the fintech revolution happened, right? So fintechs may not be possible if the fintech revolution hasn't happened. So that's when every bank or every new company came up and said, fine, how do I make my lending process simple rather than getting
Right.
papers after paper? So then originally I thought, okay, I will set up a exclusive outlet. That's why I named it as FinConvino. So I'll set up like a bank branch everywhere. People come in and I can start lending. But then fortunately, because of the earlier experience in business, I actually run past this idea with multiple people. So that's when one of my close friends in FM's, telecom came and said, why do you do that? You already have the technically enabled Kirana stores, right? Because again, 10 years back, none of the Kirana store would ever know what do you mean by KYC? They don't understand how to enter the data. Now, thanks to the telco and money transfer, the merchants have really evolved. So his thought is then why don't we leverage these merchants who are technically capable and make them as a lead sources. So that's how this entire idea came, and then of course there's no looking back after that.
Yeah.
So
I think
a good
that's
journey
great.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. But just a relevant question. I mean, a connected question. I mean, edutech is also doing like really well, right? In India, if you look at companies like Byju's and others, I'm not getting into profitability, but
Yeah.
then the scale that they have achieved, right? So that's also like humongous. So just wanted to understand, like within, how did you sort of decide to jettison the education sector and move on to the lending sector? Was there any trigger for that?
Yeah, one
For
of
you?
course that education venture of mine, E-Train India, is pretty much kind of stabilized by then. Business was pretty much on a pilot mode, and as I said, as I met more and more people on the interior side, where at least there were education institutions available. See, at least if you look at Tamil Nadu, in most of the other states, I'm not talking about really rural, but then even a small towns and cities now has an engineering college, arts college. So education to some extent, I think, has reached almost the last mile. But the fact is they're struggling to pay the fees for these students. They can't have an ability to enroll them to something else. Right. So that's when I realized there's more a financial need than the education, because that is pretty much there. So that is one thought. And of course, since coming from banking, I thought that's probably the best place for me to go and do something big for them. Right. So that's how it shifted. Otherwise, it is more I would say market understanding as to what is the real need there. Education is 10 years back was probably not even available. Now I guess it's there. At least there's schools and colleges everywhere now.
Okay. Yeah. So that helps. So if we ask you to explain what you do, I mean, what is your business in FinTechs to say a 10-year-old kid? So how would you kind of put it? So in very, very simple terms, so that our audience can also understand what is it that you really do in like very, very plain and simple language. If you could just attempt that.
Yeah, sure. See, it's simple. Like you buy your dal, chawal, atta from a kirana store. My aim is that even a loan, insurance, or any financial product should happen from neighborhood. So for me, is the only place that I should go to every transaction. Why to go to a bank? Why to go to insurance firm? Just because I want a loan, right? No, because the Kirana store delivers everything today. So that's the whole idea, saying make the credit access easily available so that anybody and everybody who wants a loan just walk into next door.
Yeah. I think that's quite simple. So if you could just like explain a little bit on what is it that you are solving for, right? I mean, giving credit and all is fine, but then what is the larger vision, and what is the key problem statement that you are sort of solving, and why only Kirana stores? Is there, because there will be many other networks as well, which you could possibly use, or others are also possibly using. So if you could just like answer these two questions.
Yeah, of course. One, of course, I think there's a universal statement which our website you see 80% of India do not have an access to credit. I think that's something known for so many years, but then the problem continues to remain unsolved. Right? If you do a deep dive as to why the problem exists, right, despite so much growth everywhere, it's a twofold. One, if I look at from a financial institution, my ability to reach the last mile continues to remain a challenge. One, of course, the ability to create a distribution and the cost of acquiring these customers. If I do a 500,000 rupees loan, I can still kind of open a branch or set up somebody to do. But if I'm talking about serving the Bharat segment, where the loan size could be as low as 30,000 bucks, even from a commercial perspective, doesn't make sense for the bank or NBFC to set up a branch. Therefore, they find it very, very tough to reach to nook and corner of the country, right? Except for the maybe tier 1, tier 2. On the other side, if you look at this particular segment, right, which is almost, I said, 80% of them, they don't know where to go and ask for a loan, right? Traditionally, they always went to neighborhoods, what do you say,
Yeah,
neighborhood
money.
stores.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they go and take a money lenders, they take money because all that they need is for a specific need. They don't, take the loan to buy a car, or they take a loan to pay a school fees. Or that somebody is ill at home, they need money. So they are used to that. So just a moment. So they are used to that particular kind of culture where they go to someone, they take the money and they don't mind paying higher interest because there is a desperate need. Second most important is they find it out of place to get into bank. Like for example, first time when we went to a 5-star hotel, we suddenly feel we don't belong to this place. It took some time for us to kind of get comfort. That's exactly what happens with this particular Bharat segment. When they don't enter a bank because they feel it's like out of place, they don't know how to converse, they don't know how to ask for a loan. So that is also putting them away from entering a bank or asking for a loan. Third, of course, most of them do not have the required documentation. As I said, 5 years, 10 years back, they will never get a loan because they don't have a document. Most of them gets a cash salary if they are salaried. Every week they get a wage. Or if it's a self-employed, you may not even have a bank account. Or may not have a business proof, right? That's the reality. Which also then becomes difficult for them to get a loan. And therefore they don't even attempt. Or maybe they would have attempted once in their life, they got a no, and then they never go. They just keep going back to the same money lender because it's a kind of comfort that they created. And as I said, for the bank, reaching this particular segment, making them aware that we can also lend is becoming difficult. Third most important, I think, while I said fintech revolution, we all know about it. My driver doesn't know about it, right? My maid doesn't know that there's a fintech revolution. Now they can get a loan. They don't know that. That is, which means you need someone to tell them saying you don't need to worry. You don't need a big bank, even a small fintech can get you a loan, right? So those are the critical factors which are, important to reach them. And very interesting question, why Kirana store, why not others? I think, as you rightly said, uh, loan sourcing has been in India ever since I at least joined the bank, right? It continues to grow. People use freelancers. Two things that really stand out when we talk about Kirana store. One, the connect between the customer and the Kirana store, I would call the trust, is immense. For example, if I ask the merchant to collect information from the customer, maybe 10 data points or 15 data points, they don't even hesitate. Because that's the kind of connect, they know each other for very long. There's a serious amount of trust that is available. So we are trying to use that trust because we are also able to service, right? Get the right data that is required to process. Second is he doesn't need to go around and looking for customers. It is his job. He's sitting in the Kirana store from morning till evening. There's always a walk-in customers to buy something. And the need for loan is always there, especially in the Bharat segment. Right? When you look at some of the data, they take an average 3.5 times a loan in a year. Right? So which obviously means I don't need any big marketing push. Merchant doesn't need to push. All that he has to make customer know that if they need a loan, they can always approach him. So these two really stood out for us in terms of our ability to collect the requisite data, therefore using the trust that is available. and an ability to source leads, which can be multifold, right? So, and of course, third being Kirana store is there everywhere. So I don't need to go and create any infrastructure. Even tomorrow morning, want to do in Srinagar, we just pick up some Kirana store, make them live, right? So
Yeah. No, that's great. But how do you kind of find these Kirana stores? Like, are you partnering with aggregator institutions, or you have a field team which goes out and finds them? So how do you? Because in India, if you see about close to 50 million or so Kirana stores, the numbers are varying from 40 million to 60 million. Different reports say different
yeah,
things. So what's
yeah.
your strategy to kind of tap the right type of Kirana stores?
Yeah, so when we started, we obviously went directly to the Kirana store because we want to understand how does it work. We had a feet on street in Chennai. We started off in Chennai. The first, I would say, 3 months, we were on the field, onboarding merchants, working with them. And unfortunately for me, COVID happened 100 days from the time that I launched the FinTechs, right? So it was like a big challenge for us. But I think that is also a time that we got to ourselves to kind of relook at everything to get the feedback from the merchant. Because the merchant was also not that busy those days because obviously shops are not allowed to open during the first lockdown. We had a lot of interaction. That's when we realized there's already a big distribution network available in India where people do mobile recharge or a money transfer or a railway ticket, which means in India, there's already a lot of people worked hard, created a network of Kirana store and placed them in a mobile app. So rather than me trying to reinvent the wheel onboard the merchants, which we did in the first 3 months where we saw the results being good, activation was very high. Then we started after about a year, pivoted towards enabling these distributors to use the merchant to deliver. So it's a win-win for both because for the distributor, he has a feet on street, he has everything that is need to run his own business. For him to say, now you can start delivering a loan, become a big wow, he gets more revenue. For the merchant, as I said, he gets one more product, and I don't need to really engage all of them. So otherwise, FinTechs would be never scalable. Now we are able to scale because we are just enabling all these distribution firms to offer a loan. So
Okay.
that's how we reached a million merchants. In fact, if all goes well, by September, we should hit a 2 million merchants. So for me, it's coming back to the banking model where we have a relationship manager who work with the distributor. So he's kind of placed there, he trained their staff, give them the status. So everything happens in the shop, and FinTechs doesn't need to really do a heavy lifting in terms of processing and everything.
So just a related question here. I think using Kirana stores for extending credit seems like a very innovative thought. But we work a lot with BCs as well, business correspondents.
Yeah.
So, and when we see a lot of new age BCNMs like the Pay Nearby or the Echo, Spice Money, RappiPay, and all of these, to some extent, they are also targeting a very similar sort of a Kirana guys, right? So then there is a question on how much can a Kirana guy do because he already needs to sell his products, and then we are loading certain things here. I think that's one challenge. The other thing is when you talk of credit, naturally the first thing which comes to our mind is using a DSA, right? And a direct selling agent has been active in this business for more than like 2 decades or so, and large banks have been using them, and we have like a lot of companies, and these guys are experts in that. So just wanted to weigh in like a model where we use DSAs vis-a-vis a model of using merchants. So how do you kind of see the difference? Why didn't you go for a DSA who already understands credit, doesn't need any education, and who's great with respect to sourcing customers?
Yeah. I'll answer both of it. The first one being all those existing banking correspondents. In fact, they are our distributors because they don't have a lending product. And fortunately, the credit is something which is not a push product. It is only a question of the merchant making the customer know that they can get a credit. By default, people will start coming. So some of the BCs we are working with, we work with them to enable the merchant to sell a credit. So for me, it's a complementary, and that's the distribution that I'm trying to ride upon. In terms of the DSA, well, as rightly said, for the DSA also end of day has to make money, right? So imagine a 20,000 rupees loan that he has to process. The cost of processing, cost of reaching customer, and so on and so forth is much more. So typically a DSA is not really keen to serve the borrower segments. If that was the case, I said you would have never had an 80% problem. Because he also has to employ people as an infrastructure cost. So they are all more keep running between the top 10, 15% of India, where you get multiple cross-sell, multiple guys calling you up saying, do you want a loan? The balance is not served because economically it doesn't make sense for them. Right. So what we now pivoted, or rather trying to use the DSA network, is that for us the problem of sourcing the lead is not an issue. I keep telling Nishan, so tomorrow morning, if I just run a campaign to all my merchants saying per lead I'll pay you whatever X or Y, I can in effect generate 100,000 leads a day. That's not a problem at all. We kind of solve that problem, the distribution and the education to the merchants. The question is, most of the banks are still not really evolved to give me an instant decision. Still, bank needs the customer to upload a bank statement and so on and so forth, and this customer needs someone to help. Most of them need someone to guide them through the entire process. So they always need someone to stay there to say, fine, don't worry, I'm with you, I'll help you go through the journey. Which was our one of the biggest problems that we faced. When we started pumping in leads, we realized we are not able to reach. Imagine I'm trying to call from Chennai to somebody in Bihar. I just don't relate to him, right? And therefore, I can't sitting in Chennai assist that customer. So what we started just about 5-6 months is creating a local processing center using the DSAs. As you rightly said, DSA knows, he understands the loan business. His problem is economically doesn't make sense to do a micro loan. Whereas I am telling him, you don't need to move an inch. I will keep pumping in leads. Within the 20-kilometer radius, you please ensure you fulfill the leads. Fulfill, help the customer go through a digital journey. So we are trying to leverage that, setup which has been created for so many years to ensure I'm able to help the customer. From a DSA, it's actually a wow factor because what they do, they keep calling everybody and anybody and hoping that somebody will say yes. And here I'm telling him saying, you don't need to call anybody. I'll pump in lead. You tell me how many people that you can put in. I can give you so many customers to service the loans.
No, I think that looks great. So for our viewers, can you just break down a customer journey? How does a customer walk in, and what is the role of a merchant? To how do you process the lead at the back end, and how the lender sort of assesses and gives the loan. So if you could just walk through that customer journey and the back end journey, so that
Sure.
the model is a little bit clear.
Yeah. So we go with this QR code. I think thanks to all these Paytms and Google Pay, they made QR code very, very famous. So even for us, the front end is a simple QR code in a Kirana store. So when the customer walks in, most of the time customer needs the merchant help. So typically is the merchant who scans the QR code on behalf of the customer. And we take about 7 data points. Obviously, when we launched, we used to collect 34 data points because I come from banking. I was trying to create a digital application form. So now we kind of rationalize that just a 6 data point that the customer has to enter. Then we are able to pull up the bureau report on behalf of the customer to assist him to understand whether he can get a loan. If yes, what is the most suitable bank that he can potentially get a loan from? So all of it takes less than a minute. So you do a data entry, get a OTP confirmation, pull up a bureau report, and then the decision engine runs. Once we decide, say, okay, this customer could potentially get it from bank A, B, C, there's a bank selection screen that pops up to him, saying here are 3 banks who can potentially give you a loan, and therefore you decide which one you want. Right? And then depends on the bank's journey. If the customer selects, say, bank A, and I have an API with the bank A, I'm able to come back and tell him possible, not possible. As that some bank says, no, I want him to give me a document. In that case, we send a link to customer to upload a document. Then that journey becomes slightly more lengthy, depends on what the bank wants. But the good part is what we at least seeing as a big change is that we should, in about a year, be able to deliver a loan then and there. My vision is I should be able to deliver a loan in less than 3 minutes. When I launched, I actually made this statement. People are actually laughing at me saying it's impossible because how can a bank can take a decision in less than 3 minutes? That's not going to happen. But thanks today, we in fact just went live with one of the FinTech firms where I will tell you customer 6 data entry, OTP, bureau, pops up saying congratulations, your loan is approved, and all that he has to do is video KYC and eNash. I think that is where most of the FinTechs and banks are heading towards, and if that happens, then it's like, nobody will go to bank. Even we will start going to Kirana store because it's very simple. Scan and get your loan.
Okay. No, that looks like a great model. So we have some more pointed questions on the
Yeah.
model itself. So Nishant, do you want to
Yeah,
close? Yeah.
yes, Sunil. So, Kishan, you sounded like a serial entrepreneur when you said you have gone and validated the idea, spent 3 months, 6 months time with the merchant. Uh, but that's just the beginning, right? Along the way, also there have been quite a few hypotheses which you must have put out, and I'm pretty sure market has its own way of teaching you and
Absolutely.
tempering the initial expectation. So can you
Absolutely.
just talk about those observations, and if you have made any pivots from the initial stages to where we are today?
Yeah. A lot. I think, that is what the beauty of startup. What I think today, even today is brilliant, might completely change tomorrow. And that's the
Right.
reason why I said we always ensure that we meet the merchants at least once in 15 days, understand. Yeah, to start, I think, as I said, when I launched, I had 35 data points to be collected by the merchant. Like looking back, I was wondering how could even somebody think about it. So it took 25 minutes for a merchant to enter the data. And I still come from the banking mindset, right? I have 4-page application form. Then we realized we put our promoters there to kind of push the product. So one of the feedback that came saying, no, this is impossible. While the customer is giving all the data, which is brilliant, which validated our trust model, but then we realized that's not going to happen. So we started rationalizing one by one using multiple APIs. So today, as I said, I'm doing only 6. It's become very, very easy, smooth process. Second bigger learning was that we were setting up a big back office. Because said moment the second COVID lockdown got lift off and the retailers started becoming active. And in all our enthusiasm, we went and onboarded 1 million merchants through partners. It's a big, big celebration saying, no, we got 1 million merchants. And suddenly floodgates open, you are pumped up with so many leads. And those times, the journey was, when I said those times, just about a year back, journey was that I need to call the customer after he inputs. If it's not possible, I will tell him upfront. So the system is able to decide you can't get a loan. But almost 71% of my customers were potentially eligible, which means subject to the documents. And then a battalion of team calling customers saying, sir, you need to give me, bank statements, you need to send me some PAN card copies. And I'm talking to a segment where they don't have internet banking. And my expectation is I want him to log into internet and download a bank statement in PDF format. We realized this is just not possible. So that took almost 2-3 months for us to understand, saying it's impossible for us to get those things from the customer, especially from this segment. We tried incentivizing merchants, but then merchant obviously said, as you rightly said earlier, he has multiple business to do. So he doesn't have a time to help the customer do a document upload, help him open a net banking. So then we came with this, local processing centers. Again, there is few learnings there which we are trying to address. But the most importantly that what we set out to say is we don't want to process the lead. We will find banks, we will work with them so that we at least get a decision saying, yes, I'm willing to underwrite. I think thanks to this entire account aggregator framework, this is going to become reality. So I don't need to do a heavy lifting. Banks should be able to start deciding on this.
Right. Kishan, so we have talked about customers, um, the merchant and the partners, processing centers, what you're calling as processing center, are equally important, right?
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
your eyes and ears on the ground. Can
Correct.
you delve a little deeper on what you how do you manage their expectations? First of all, how do you set their expectation, manage it? And I'm pretty sure there would be some hindrances and hiccups on the way. For example, when you had 1 lakh merchants and then you had to tone it down because the system was not ready to handle 1 lakh requests a day, right? Especially because lenders were not ready to process that many loans. So can you just talk about your partners on the ground and how do you, what are the, some tips which you have observed or which you have implemented to manage them better?
Yeah. So I think that channel or distribution model also kind of evolved almost every 3-6 months. Now,
Right.
as I said, we have very limited direct merchants, more like for me to keep doing some pilot test ready. Otherwise, we pretty much work only with these distributors who are having the merchants. So we really saying for me to create a new relationship with the merchant and then, kind of keep it going is difficult because merchant, as you rightly said, has so many things to do and multiple
Right.
people are sitting on his head to say, sell this, sell that. We said, let me not own the merchant. We'll start working only with the distributor. So that is one. Second, because we started working with the distributors, there are few of them who actually came back and taught us how to run this business. I said, we still had this banking mindset. Your system was slightly more different. We never had what I was talking about bank selection before. I used to take the lead, get an OTP. If I can't process, I'll say decline. Otherwise, I'll say thank you, we'll get back. So one of the leading distributor came up saying, no, this is not the way. You are basically dropping the customer in between. Merchant doesn't know what happened. Can you please take him to a page where you tell him which all the bank he can possibly be eligible? So we brought in this what we call a bank selection page. So that kind of made him understand the merchant say, yes, this customer now gets these three banks offer, he will decide. So he's saying there's a logical closure. So a lot of my system enhancements, I think, came from the distributors. Second, as I said, like relationship manager concept, we earlier again had these distributors. We celebrate, I go with the code, sign up, MOU, take a picture and come back. And then the team and everybody forgets about him. After 2 months, he'll say, sorry, it doesn't work, right? So we never been very realistic in terms of managing our partners. Now, for every partner that we sign, we set up a dedicated team. We appoint somebody called relationship manager who sits only in his office. If the partnership is big in terms of number of merchants, then we have a team sitting within his office. So their primary job is to ensure that there is a lot of training that happens to their sales force, a lot of engagements with the merchant through their own WhatsApp groups, so that the merchant A knows that I did so much leads, I got so much money, the B knows he's supposed to do. Third, of course, we also go back every week to their set of merchants, feedback on the leads that we receive. Because merchant also is not us, we think, they are also evolved. In fact, one of the merchant called up saying, अच्छा मेरे को अभी पता है 10,000 रुपए सैलरी चाहिए, उसको कैटेगरी ए में मिलेगा तो 1 लाख मिलेगा, नहीं तो 50,000 मिलेगा. So they are also evolving. They also understand.
Right.
They also don't want to keep putting junk, because it's also, if you look at it, is end of day merchant assuming sends me 20 leads. If I decline all the 20, he is saying, but I feel bad. Next time the customer walks in, he's saying, uske baad mat jao, kuch nahi kar sakta ho, right? It doesn't work for him. So he is also becoming a bit more sensitive, and that needs a lot of training. So we now created local teams with each partner. So we provide training, we give a lot of feedback. I think all this happened because a lot of those partners come back and talk to us and tell us saying, what is that we are not doing right? That
Right.
really.
Right. Right. So, Kishan, this is interesting, but there has always been and especially when I go and talk to uh, the assisted models with a few experts, they say that Nishant, the DIY is coming. Everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has internet. The penetration will come to around 900 million or 1,000 million users in India by 2028. How do you counter it? Because you are banking heavily on the local support.
For me, it is actually a big opportunity, right? More and more digital revolution happening, more and more the need for someone to help the customers. So think about the domestic money transfer. For all of us, it's simple Google Pay or anything that you want. Even today, even if you walk across Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore, even the main road, you will see a board saying domestic money transfer done here. Because it's not just about clicking those two buttons. It's all about a trust. They need someone who can tell him saying, you don't worry, I am with you. If, for example, money doesn't go to the beneficiary, I will ensure it gets rectified.
Right.
That, which is a very simple transaction. Compare that to a loan journey. It's much more complicated, right? And as I said, my customers still not really comfortable with the internet bank. Right? So for them, more the digital revolution, higher the need for assistance. It's just a comfort to say, fine, if I go there, that person is going to really help. And as we keep talking about one of the example that we have in Tirupur, it's a simple loan assistance center, I would call, right? Where 200 people walk in every single, like a bank. And it is not, imagine the same customer has got a loan, say 6 months back. Ideally, he should be
Right.
able to process on his own now. He still
Right.
comes back there. And when he comes, he brings another 5 people saying, don't worry, come here. There's somebody who's going to help you go through the journey, get your money. And the other reality is, out of 100 people who walk in, we are able to deliver only 5 disbursements.
Right.
Which balance 95 are going back saying, I'm not getting a loan.
Right.
Imagine if this is the case, ideally the center should got shut 2 years back. Because 95 guys are going back saying, I'm not getting a loan. But the reality is the 95 guys are saying, well, I am not able to get a loan because I am not eligible. But
Right.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'll come back after 6 months. Which means they are saying, if I come to the center, if I don't get a loan, which means nobody can get me a loan.
So
And
how
so,
are
Right.
we?
So
Yeah, just a related question here. So how are we helping those set of customers? Because I have two questions here on the do-it-yourself thing, which Nishant also mentioned, right? So if you look at Indian population itself, about 230 to 250 million people are number literate, also called as oral segments, right? So
right.
people who know numbers, but they cannot read and write. So now we are talking of a assisted transaction here where the merchant is helping them to sort of answer those 6 questions and take the journey. But what if he or she cannot read and write? So how does that thing work for you? And plus, if you could just clarify a little bit more on the time management of the merchant himself or herself. Like, have you had experiences where the merchant has made the customer wait for long? This oral segment customer because he or she was busy attending to other customers, and then I mean this has sort of made the customer unhappy or so. Any such instances you have found?
yeah. So answer first, I think so we're not even gone to that segment yet, where people are not able to. I'm still, I would say
Right.
between that 40 to 80%. And these are people who are eligible for a loan. I'm not even talking about unserved. Sorry, unserved, that we still don't have bank to give them a loan. I'm talking about underserved, where, for example, I'm a salaried customer working in a bunion clothing, getting a 15,000 rupees salary, which means I could potentially get a loan, but I don't know where to go. So that segment,
Right.
it's
Right.
like 200
Right.
million
Right.
where they're
Yeah.
eligible, but they don't get a loan. So those are segments who typically come to us. Second, I said, because the learning is that merchant, as I said, do not have the kind of time. So the first 6 data point OTPs are less than a minute. They are more than happy to do it. The challenge comes after the bank selection is done. As I said, either they need to give me a statement or the bank will call them to go through the journey. That merchant don't have patience and he is not tuned to that. So merchants as a category, what we learned is he is not eager to get a 2,000 rupees after 20 days. He is eager to get a 20 rupees now in 2 minutes. That's how their business model is, right? So if I tell him saying you help the customer, get him a loan and I'll pay you 2,000, probably he's not interested. That's why we came up with this local processing center concept where we appoint potentially a DSA or somebody else who will help the customers. So the journey, what happens in the merchant is, as soon as I enter the data OTP, and if my system says you are potentially eligible, customer walks away, merchant say thank you, and merchant tells him saying, here's the loan processing center, they will call you. And then the local center start working with the customer either through a phone or the customer walks into a center, and then the journey happens.
Okay.
Right. Right. So Krishnan, if you can, in one line, what is the moat of Finicus? Why Finicus? Why any other company can't come and replicate what Finicus is doing? If you can keep it like 1 or 2 lines, what is it that you think is your USP?
See, sir, first of all, I don't really believe in this mode, right? Anybody can do anything, of course, subject to availability of resources. But what we are trying to create, I would say, a differentiation is one on the tech. I think that's
Right.
for us, what we started off as a tech today is actually become really big. And in fact, we are now getting interest for the technology platform, forget about the core business. So that for us is one of the key differentiator in terms of our ability to get things done in less than a minute. And second, of course, the domain expertise in terms of building this entire rule, risk algorithm, and all of it, right? So otherwise,
Right.
it's right? So those are primary two things. One, of course, the tech, and of course, risk algorithm. And our third is obviously we are trying to make the distribution big, so that it's kind of give us that ability when we actually go live in instant loan, which, as I said,
Right.
is going to happen maybe 3-6 months. GST coming online, bank statement already available. That time I should be at least in 20-30 lakh merchants, where you come. I keep saying scan karo loan power, right? That should be our mantra. You come, scan, enter 6 fields. I say congrats. Here is your 1 lakh rupees approved, right? So
Right. Right. And this might be a very good time, because prediction is that by 2026-27 India will be $5 trillion economy. The
yeah,
per capita income will rise up to 2,500, and that seems to be an inflection point worldwide.
correct.
So what you are excited about? How, if I can ask, if you are just starting with FinTechs, I'm assuming you're just scratching the surface right now. If you have to see 100x growth or 1000x growth, what fundamentally has to change both at FinTechs and at the ecosystem level? What would be your wish list?
Yeah. First, I think at the ecosystem level, where the financial institutions start using the account aggregator framework aggressively. Right? The day the financial institution has an ability to make a decision on the fly, things are going to change significantly. As I said,
But
instead of
why they are not doing it today? Can you just go into that? Why
change
they are not
always
doing
takes
it?
time, right? I said, if I was probably sitting in the bank, I would be still thinking the boardroom whether to do it or not. That's the reality. I think the fintechs are much faster in adapting, and things will change, right? So banking, for example, became part of the account aggregator ecosystem for almost 2.5 years. Not
Right.
every bank still uses it. As I said, 85% of the customer people still say, no, I want him to upload a 6 month bank statement. I think
Right.
that will change with the competition coming in. That will change. And moment you stop asking documents, it's going to be the solution, right? All that I need is a mobile number to get a bank statement and the GST number for the GST data. Hopefully, IT at some point in time. Then, as a financial institution, I got all the valid information for me to take a decision. See, that to my mind, we already are towards that, right? Especially with the
Right.
Okan and all
Right.
that we talked about. That's going to happen. For me, that is a much bigger news for FinTechs, where the instant decision is going to completely change the way we are today doing our business from a cost and ability to grow. Second, of course, on the technology, we continue to evolve a lot. We, in fact, are trying to work with all the account aggregators and going
Right.
to back to say, fine, if you can't make the change, I can help you make the change. Right? I can give you a
Right.
platform so that you can make a decision through that. Right? So, yeah. So I think as long as I'm able to provide a decision instantly, getting a distribution on board is not a big deal. Because all of them
Right.
at the end of the day want the customer to go happy, satisfied, and by default, we will get more and more people joining us, right? So,
Right. No, I really love this idea of empowering merchants or your local moment run store in order to uh, not only increase their disposable income, but also bridging the gap between uh, those who have access to financial services and those who have not. And as you mentioned, that tech is you have already built a very sort of agile tech which can take care of the future changes, right? So just Sunil,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have
I have
any for
I have
yeah.
a connected question, Krishnan.
yeah.
So, I mean, your vision looks to me like you want to democratize credit and
Absolutely.
sort of provide credit to those individuals whom the banks or NBFCs do not want to lend for multiple reasons. And this being a digital lending model, the amount of loan would also be very small. I mean, and it could range from say 5,000 to 5 lakh or whatever, depending on the need, the depending on the tenure, depending on the product and all that, right? So just drawing parallels from what happened in Kenya on digital lending, right? MicroSave also did a study there. And what we were also given to understand was that digital lending was opened up and people sort of were immediately getting credit on their mobile phones, no questions asked. Like you are talking of 3 minute, 2 minute, and that was a reality already happening in certain markets like Kenya and China as well. But what was the flip side of this was also a lot of people were given credit, and there were no customer protection principles in place. And what happened is, even if a person defaulted for a very small loan amount, his or her name came up in the bureau, and which sort of then blacklisted the individual from taking any larger loans. So there was a greater issue of around customer protection. So the question is, like, while we are sort of facilitating everyone to get a credit, like, have you thought of how do you want to protect the customer so that he or she makes a right decision, and also sort of knows what he or she is sort of signing up for? Even though you give the agency in the hand of the person, they select the bank, and they do most of the decision making, but then a lot of them may not be literate, and they may not be able to make a good decision. Just because they are getting a loan, people may walk up and just apply for a loan. So have you thought of these issues? Because this could, if not handled well, it could also mar the business as well.
Right.
Absolutely. Very, very valid. I think two parts to this. One, I think from a compliance RBI perspective, I think they are the best regulators. As you would already seen, a lot of things being taken. I think they obviously will come back in terms of how a collection effort could be for this kind of loan segment. Second, most important, coming again from banking, our biggest thing that we educate to our LPC and to the team here, I said most of the time merchant loan is not at the time of the disbursement. It's either the loan processing center or my team. So we have a grid reference to the team saying if a person is getting a 10,000 rupees salary, even if he's eligible for 3 lakhs, our team will communicate to him saying don't take 300,000. You will not be able to do it. Reduce it. So probably I would have my average, sanction to disbursement ratio if bank looks at will be anywhere between 65 to 70%. Number two, we now instituted a process in the reason, one on two perspectives, to call back the customer. I have the list. I just like a reminder call. On 2nd of every month, I call the customer saying your EMI is due on so-and-so date. Hope you have the money to ensure it happens. One, of course, to ensure that the customer is happy, each in turn helps me get more customers. Because typically no DSA do a service beyond this. Second, also a motive to ensure that I don't get defaults in a PIN code. Moment I get a default, the PIN code will be blacklisted by the bank for the rightful reason, and the particular distributor is going to face the brunt. And I can't blame the distributor, he doesn't know the banking. So we are now trying to create those processes which obviously will start percolating down. And believe me or not, these customers are actually good because, as you rightly said, they are not aware. Moment he gets a 3 lakh rupees, when I call him and say, don't take 300,000, you said you have to get an hospitalization done, the bill comes to 1,10,000, take 1,50,000. He immediately said, sir, okay, sir, Tamil, right? Now, Micho language, saying, thank you so much. You are right. I will take only 1,50,000. In fact, he will be confirming back to me the screenshot saying you will reduce the loan amount, send a screenshot saying I taken only 1.5 lakhs. So this segment, they are really good. All that they need is someone to help them, guide them. And that's what we are trying to attempt. Otherwise, it will become a big challenge even for the banks, then become a delinquency is an issue. But third, I think is also because when we talk about digital lending, it's not a blind lending that probably was done 5-10 years back, because the only motive then was to do 2 minutes loan. Now, because of digital footprint, you got so much information about the customer. So you are able to kind of decide what is the right loan amount that the customer could potentially repay. And so I think that will become even better with more and more data availability.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, regenerative AI is also sort of disrupting as of now, right? And a lot of talks about how regenerative AI can be used for multiple sectors. And lending is only one of it.
Yeah.
Savings, agriculture, climate, so many sectors as well. So as a practitioner and as a founder, what is your view on using regenerative AI in your model, and will it benefit? Like, I mean, what are your views on that?
Or is it too early to say?
Yeah.
Again, see, end of the day, what lending is all about the ability to predict risk or assess risk. That's what we are trying to do. So many permutation, combination, bank statement. I don't know how many parameters that we are trying to get to that to say, is he credit risk worthy? If yes, will he pay? Right? Or will he not pay? I think with all this AI ability and predictive, regenerative, that's what it's going to do. And especially for India, when I'm creating big digital footprint. Every transaction is coming through Google Pay. So there's more and more data about the customer. On top, you put this regenerative AI. It will tell us saying whether to lend or not. If yes, what is the amount that you should lend? So that's actually for lending. It's going to be much big. And for me personally, as FinTechs, I will have an ability to decide which bank the customer will get a loan from. So because we are also very clear on one aspect that I will not log in a file with more than one bank. More the number of bank, bad for the customer because his bureau score is going to get impacted. So we will never do that. We'll tell the customer saying, if you don't get a loan from bank A, please don't do again with bank B because high probability your score is going to get impacted. That today I'm doing with the rules, right? Imagine if I have this A, that will tell me saying, okay, Nishan starting with M, blue color shirt, I guess, IndusInd Bank will give you a loan, right? That is really going to change me. You scan, put 6 data, I know which bank will give you. I hit the bank, I pop up and say it is. So for my approval rate also goes up, we'll also make more revenue. So yeah, in fact, we are trying to get some people from with that AI ML background too early, but because our ability to get data is much higher. Say I have pin code wise, merchant wise data. So I could potentially predict risk at some point to say in this particular street of whatever Ullas Nagar, a person comes with the green shirt will have default. And that data granularity is available with us. So for us, the AI is going to really change the game.
Right. Yeah. So even though it looks really promising, but when I think only time can tell whether I mean it will be really beneficial or to what extent will lenders be able to kind of depend on it, because like we know, right, there are different views. The jury is still out on whether till what extent AI is going to benefit and things like that. So I think even though it's going to be a great tool, but I think we have to wait and watch. But yeah,
I think, see, this is all names given, right? If you look
yeah,
at 25 years back, itself we are doing all this. But yes, it probably
yeah.
took 25 days for us to get to a data. Today, it probably become 2.5 minutes. Underlying is the theme remain the same. You're still looking at the data to decide what will happen in future, right? So
Right. And I think other thing has happened that the amount of data which is public has become enormous. Government has opened, different government department has opened up about their anonymous data which public and research companies can use. I think that has feed into the system, make it, and of course the computing and all has become much advanced, right?
Yeah. So last couple of questions. One is, since you are closely associated with this financial inclusion lab run by the Bharat Inclusion Initiative, jointly run by MSC and CII-Co, just wanted to understand maybe very briefly on how did the lab kind of support you, and I mean, and what are your views on the kind of support that you got?
I think the first and foremost is the network. When I say network, it's not just hi, hello. I think similar set of people trying to build something. In fact, we already working very closely with 3 of them. We do quite a few work, and both of us are getting benefited in terms of expansion, revenue, and all that. So that really helps. Otherwise, sitting in Chennai, I would have never realized somebody is doing something great in Gurgaon or Bangalore or whatever. So that's one big thing that's happened. The second, I said, and independently coming from MSC, go to market, tell us what we thought is wrong and what is reality. I think that's also a big eye opener. I said, being an entrepreneur all the time, you probably tend to think you are in the right direction unless somebody comes and says, like a sounding board saying this is not the right thing. That's again is a big change. In fact, I told Nishant that I want to send you an update every 15 days on what actions been taken. How are we benefiting from that? I think that's a big support. Third, of course, we met quite a few other mentors and people who have done this in the past, are able to guide us. We keep reaching out to them whenever I have some issues, like for example, technology now that we are talking about. While I know the current technology is much more superior than what I was probably ready for. So some of those people got me connected to the right people. like for example, trying to build a risk score. My thought is I should be able to start predicting score at risk at a pin code level. So that we don't have the in-house expertise. So through the mentor, we got people connected. So yes, there's an immense support. There's a lot of support.
Yeah.
I was just telling somebody after 25 years, if I can find value, imagine a young entrepreneur, 25 years will find huge value.
Yeah, sure. Feels very good. So
No,
once you
really.
become a unicorn, don't forget us. Just one last thing, like just in one or two lines on what is the kind of advice you have for people who want to enter into digital lending, like for entrepreneurs? So do you have any piece of advice with your rich banking experience and with a few years of experience of running FinTechs?
I think the timing you can't get better than this. That's a brilliant time today to get into lending. But the first advice would be to be very, very focused on compliance, regulatory matters. I think in the enthusiasm of building something and lending, you probably tend to lose focus there. Because lending is very easy. It's all about giving money. It's very simple. If you have 100 crores, you can actually lend tomorrow morning, right? But the whole idea is being regulatory compliant. And second is to have proper risk prediction model or underwriting norms. Right, that is going to be the big differentiator. You should be able to very clearly define to say, okay, which segment at what risk level that I'm going to do it. So that's building the risk capabilities is the core to the lending business. Third, of course, you got to have the right strategic partners who is going to be ensuring that there's a capital available, funding available, and ensure that you've been guided through. And of course, the most important is the customer experience. And because the opportunity is huge, right? You're talking about some billions of dollars market available. You got to build your own niche segment. Because, like as I said, it's quite simple. I can lend to everybody, and if you stand outside, you can disperse 100 crores right away. So
Right.
you just got to figure out the right segment that you think is possible and ensure compliance, risk capabilities, technology, right?
Right. No,
Well, market
absolutely.
is big. The opportunity is very, very big.
Right. No, great points. I hope the budding entrepreneurs are listening.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thanks a lot, Krishnan, for your time, for sharing your valuable insights on your journey and how you intend to make a dent in the Bharat's segment. So wish you all the very best. And we hope that you grow to 10 million merchants and 20 million and more in the coming days and months. Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you,
Thanks,
Nishan.
Nishan. Thank you.
Thanks, Vishnu.